Hello, my name is Christine Iannicelli, and today I will discuss what escape rooms are, why they're effective in educational contexts, and how you can design your own escape rooms to teach information and digital literacy. So what is an escape room? Well, an escape room is a game that requires participants to solve numerous puzzles in order to reach an ultimate objective. For example, finding the key to get out of the room. Escape rooms are often cooperative and timed. Now, I'm a big proponent of game-based learning, and one of the many reasons why I use games in the classroom is that I sometimes find it difficult to engage students and get them invested in information and digital literacy. This is because students often have negative preconceived notions of what they believe the instruction will entail. They think it's going to be boring. They think it's irrelevant. They know how to Google, they know how to use technology, and so they don't see any immediate rewards or consequences for engaging in the instruction, because most of them believe they can complete the project without this instruction. Now let's think about what happens when I tell students that we are going to play a game today. Suddenly, there's positive preconceived notions, because most people see games as fun, not boring. It's very relevant that people playing a game are paying attention, otherwise they won't be successful. And finally, there are immediate rewards and consequences. If you're answering questions right, you feel good. If not, you get feedback on your progress and you know how much you actually do know and don't know. Escape rooms in particular help students build a number of skills. This includes problem solving and critical thinking skills, as escape rooms in and of themselves require finding solutions to complex problems. They can also help students build frustration tolerance, as it can be quite frustrating when you can't solve a puzzle, and oftentimes you need to learn how to adjust, try something new, ask for help from another player or a game master. This actually mirrors the frustration tolerance that many students feel when conducting library research or using technology. With library research, they may try a search and get no results. With technology, they may get an error message. That can be rather frustrating, but they can't give up. They need to troubleshoot. They need to ask for help, just as they have to do in escape rooms. Now, in order to be successful in an escape room, communication and collaboration is key. So escape rooms help foster team building and encourage participants to communicate well with each other. And finally, escape rooms can help students build confidence in their own abilities to tackle difficult problems and situations. And it also levels the playing field for students of all backgrounds and abilities because they're all working together. I also enjoy using escape rooms as assessment tools because as students are playing, I can see firsthand how much they know about the topic and how much they don't. For example, in my library escape room, one of the puzzles required them to search the library catalog and find the call number for a book, which was the code they needed to open up a combination lock. I was surprised how many students didn't know what a call number was at the college level, and so it showed me that this class needed additional instruction on some basic information literacy skills. Now, if I was just teaching a traditional information literacy class and asked them if they knew what a call number was, they probably would have just shook their head yes. But I was able to see in the escape room that they actually didn't know that information. In addition to assessment, I often enjoy just hosting open library events, as it's a great way to get people into the library and see the library as not just a space for study, but a place to collaborate, ideate, and have fun. It also helps paint the picture of a librarian as a fun, approachable person, not the cliché mean old lady who shushes people. So while there's many benefits, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there are some challenges to designing and hosting escape rooms. They do take a lot of time to design and plan, so you should leave yourself several months. Second, scaling up can be a bit difficult because most escape rooms work best with less than 8 people. Most classes are not that small, so in cases of classes larger than 8 or 10 people, you will need to create mini escape rooms, where you split students up into small groups of say 4 or 5 and have them solve a few puzzles each. And finally, one major challenge is the lack of memory recall that some students may have of the concepts they learned during the game. That's because most of the time, after participants play an escape room, they remember the feeling they had in maybe 1 or 2 puzzles, but not all of them. So if I'm using an escape room to teach concepts, it's really important that I debrief at the end of the game and build in some reflection. I may even want to come back for a future session to recap what they learned. This is also important because not every student will have the opportunity to interact with every puzzle. So I often use escape rooms for teaching general concepts, for example, introducing library resources or talking about basic digital literacy. If I need to go beyond, then I will use some traditional instruction. So now that we've discussed why escape rooms are beneficial, let's talk about the design process. If you go to my website, which is go.ursinus.edu/escape, you will find the 10 steps of game design linked under the related links section. We will go through these 10 steps and then go in delving deeper into how to design an actual escape room. So the first step to game design is to determine your learning objectives. What do you hope students will be able to do or know as a result of playing your game? Now, in a traditional escape room that I'm hosting as an open library event, my outcomes might just be to encourage collaboration and critical thinking. In the classroom, however, my outcomes need to be more aligned to the curriculum goals. For example, in my information literacy escape room, called Escape the Librarian, the premise was that the librarian was angry that the students fell asleep during her class session, so she locked them in the library and wouldn't let them leave until they proved they were information literate. These were the outcomes that I measured within the game. Puzzles directly aligned to these outcomes. For example, one of the puzzles required them to go onto the library website and identify certain resources and services. Once I've determined my outcomes, I can determine how long the game will last. Most escape rooms last anywhere from 30 minutes to 1 hour. I generally recommend having participants sign up for 1-hour time slots, but making the escape room only last between 30 and 45 minutes. This leaves time for explaining the game and debriefing at the end. You'll also want to make sure that you leave plenty of time before and after for setup and takedown. If you are hosting the event in the library, you'll also want to choose when during the semester and during the day would be best. Generally, I host my escape rooms a week or two before midterms and a week or two before finals because I find that they serve as good stress relievers, but it's also not too busy of a time for students to play. I also generally host them in the late afternoon or evenings, as that tends to be the best time for students. Next, you want to determine the format of your game. Virtual formats are considered digital escape rooms that students play online. When my college went remote in March due to the coronavirus, I decided to adapt several of my games into a digital format using Breakout EDU, which I already had a subscription for. This allows you to build digital escape rooms. You could also use survey software such as Qualtrics or Google Forms. My virtual games are available on the website I linked to before if you would like to take a look at what digital escape rooms may look like. Students can play virtual games on their own, or they can split up into groups and play in a synchronous video conferencing session. One student shares their screen, launches the game, and the rest of the students help give them ideas about how to solve the puzzles. Virtual games are definitely more linear than traditional escape rooms, but they can also take a bit less time to create as you don't need to purchase materials. You could also choose to create a physical game such as an escape room kit that you would hand out to small groups and they would play on their own. This tends to be well for large classrooms. Traditional escape rooms, however, are real-time. This is where students are playing in a physical room and you're controlling the timing of the game. This is the format we will be focusing on mostly today. We already know the type of game, an escape room, but we do need to determine the style of the game. So independent would be a digital or virtual escape room that students would play on their own. The competitive style would be a head-to-head escape room. This is where you can split students up into 2 large groups. Each are playing their own escape rooms, but they're racing to see who completes it first. If you have a large space and a large group, this can work rather well. I hosted a head-to-head escape room in early spring, where I had some students playing a Marvel game and some students playing a DC game. I tried to make the puzzles fairly similar so they would both finish around the same time. This created a lot of energy and competitive spirit within the game itself. By and large, however, most of your escape rooms will be cooperative, where all participants are working together to escape the room. So now I know my style and the parameters of my game. It's time to start creating it. Here are the steps I generally follow when designing an escape room. First, I want to gain some inspiration. I do this by playing escape rooms, buying escape room kits or card games and playing them with friends. I'll also Google escape room ideas. Breakout EDU and Lock Paper Scissors are good sites to consult for design resources. They also have escape rooms available for purchase if you don't want to design the game from scratch or you want to adapt one of their games. The more escape rooms you play, the more ideas you'll have. Next, choose a theme for your game. Why are they locked in this room, and what's their goal? Themes can run the gamut from traveling back in time to find a specific object, to entering fictional worlds, to discipline-specific scenarios. So be creative and pick a theme that excites you and your participants. Next, it's time to design the puzzles. There will need to be multiple puzzles that participants need to solve in the game. There's countless types of puzzles that you can use. These include fill in the blanks. For example, in this one, they went on the library website and they searched for this information. Specific letters were underlined with red, and that spelled out the word pen light. That led them to a black light in the room, disguised as a pen, that they could use to illuminate hidden messages. You could also use clues hidden in writing. For example, they found this writing, which led them to a book that they had to look for specific chapters, pages, letters, and words, which spelled out an additional clue. You can also have clues hidden in pictures. For example, this one has numbers corresponding to letters. That might help them solve a cipher. I also like to use map drawing, so I give them specific coordinates or locations, and as they draw the map route, it can actually spell out numbers, letters, or directions. Overlays can also be used, so they can find some specific text or an image, but if they overlay a piece of paper with cutouts, they'll be able to find specific numbers or letters. You can also incorporate logic puzzles and different ciphers like Morse codes or pigpen ciphers. The possibilities are really endless, but just know that your puzzles will need to eventually open up something that is locked. These locked objects could include padlocked boxes and bags, diversion safes or regular safes, locked doors, or locked computers. For example, in my digital literacy escape room, the students had to get into a password-protected computer. There was an infographic on the wall that explained what made a good password and advised people to not write down their passwords or hide them under the computers. That gave students the clue to look under the laptop where they found a cipher that helped them solve the password. Be careful with locking Apple devices like iPads and phones, because Apple will lock students out if they enter too many incorrect combinations. So I generally only password protect computers, and in the case of password protecting something else online, I generally will password protect an online survey instead. Once you've created multiple puzzles and you've chosen the objects that they will unlock, you need to create pathways that participants will follow. Unlike scavenger hunts, most escape rooms have 2 to 3 paths that participants can take simultaneously. There's various examples, but in this example, a couple students can be working on puzzle A, while other students work on puzzle B, and finally other students can work on puzzle C. Eventually, all the puzzles will culminate to solve the final puzzle, puzzle D. I next need to create an inventory list, so make a list of all the supplies you need, including locked objects, the locks themselves, anything you need to print, any decorations you need to buy. Try to be as detailed as possible so you don't forget anything. You can purchase supplies on Amazon or on escape room websites like Breakout EDU. I often buy a few extra locks as occasionally they can break or get stuck in a lock position. I then need to secure a location, unless I'm just doing it in the context of a class. But even sometimes, escape room classrooms may not be conducive, so I may choose to hold the escape room somewhere else, like in a lounge or an office. Escape rooms, though, can be held virtually anywhere, and most classrooms can work rather well, as long as they have few objects in the room so participants don't get distracted. Be sure the room is available at least 30 minutes before and after the game, so you have time to set up and take down. Now it's time for me to create my setup instructions. This should include where each object needs to go, the combinations that the locks need to be set to, and what each locked object has inside. So try to be as detailed as possible so you don't forget anything. That way, when it's time to set up, you can just follow the instructions. I then create rules for the game. It's important to explain the theme and the rules so participants know what they're allowed to do when they start playing. This can include what's off limits or what they're not allowed to touch, what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. For example, can they draw or rip up papers they find? Can they touch technology in the room? You also want to play test the game, so find some co-workers or student workers to play your escape room in a test run through and give you feedback. As you play, you can take notes on what they're finding difficult, what they're solving easy, and any changes that you need to make. This is an important step of any game design, is to have an evaluation or testing phase before you launch it. That way you can edit it and make sure that it's working correctly. Now it's time to implement my game. This involves gathering my supplies, my setup instructions, and advertising my game if it's an open escape room. So if I'm not hosting it for a class and it's open to anyone, I generally create a sign-up sheet and advertising it using my school's communication channels. I recommend using something like Doodle or Sign-Up Genius for the sign-ups, as they're free and you can limit the number of participants that can sign up for each time slot. I generally ask for their name and contact information so I can communicate with them before and after the game. For example, usually I will send them an introductory email with a themed invitation or a video introducing them to the game in character. This builds up some anticipation and excitement for the event. And then afterwards, once they're completed the game, I take a photo and I send it to them through email. Once you're ready to launch the game and you've set it up, explain the game to participants and then just watch them play. I offer clues as needed. Generally, I tell them they're allowed around 3 clues. And in the game, I'm projecting a countdown on a TV or a projector. As they're playing, I try not to offer clues unless they ask or they're really stuck, as escape rooms are meant to be challenging. At the end, I take photos of the group, and then I break down or reset the game for the next group. Finally, as games are being played, it's always a good idea to continue assessing and improving on them. There's always improvements that I can make. So to wrap up, I've designed and hosted over a dozen escape rooms, and here are my major takeaways. Know that things will go wrong. I've experienced Apple devices locking us out, Wi-Fi issues, broken locks, the combinations not working. It's okay. Just know that things may go wrong, but students generally understand, and I usually will just jump in and help them fix the issue before moving on to another puzzle. Know that participants will forget and break the rules. For example, if I tell them that a picture on the wall is off limits, I guarantee they're going to touch them. So just giving them gentle reminders during the game is probably needed. Now in my games, I've provided laptops and tablets in the room for them to solve puzzles. I even provided a Google Cardboard in my digital literacy escape room so they could watch a 360 video. But I found that most students actually didn't use them and preferred to just use their mobile devices to look up information or watch videos. So most of the time, I just allow them to use mobile devices anyway. And finally, do be mindful of copyright and fair use. I will sometimes use copyrighted materials, say pictures I find online, under fair use principles, as they're being used in an educational context. Creating digital escape rooms makes things a little trickier, as you need to be careful what materials you use and the themes. Just something to be aware of. I generally do use copyrighted themes like Star Wars, Jurassic Park, etc., because I know they're fun themes for students to use, and because I'm using them in an educational context. But it's not something that I would say invite the community to come to or charge money for, right? This is not for a commercial purpose. This is for educational use only, and therefore I generally feel pretty comfortable with using some of these materials, but just something for you to think about. Finally, given all this, it may seem like a huge undertaking, but I also know that escape rooms can be incredibly rewarding, and they've become very popular at my institution. Here are just some of the quotes I've received. I was in a class where students were not very engaged. They weren't communicating well, and they seemed rather bored. However, after the game, the professor told me that this was the most engaged that she had ever seen her students. They never talked to one another, and in this game, they were working together. So even the small wins can be monumental. Most students just tell me that they've had a lot of fun, and they generally ask, when's the next one? And they'll suggest themes. That shows me that the games are working, and that's why I continue doing it. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to contact me directly. You can email me or call me, and also consult my website for more escape room ideas. Thank you for attending. Have a nice day.